Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name's Barbara Hayward, and I'm the facilitator of the podcast Adoption, Uncensored Truth and Beyond. I need to read at the minute a disclaimer though, if you just bear with me. I'll just get it up on my iPhone. Okay. This video is intended for educational and documentary purposes. The content within this video contains themes that some individuals may consider triggering, offensive, or disturbing. The intent is not to disrespect viewers or any individual spoken about herein. Viewer discretion is advised. Today we have a wonderful, wonderful young lady. Her name is Janelle Manton, and she comes from Queensland in Brisbane. And she's an adoptee. And this program, this site, this podcast set is about the biological parents and children from adoptions, the biological. And today we're going to learn from the adoptee's point of view what Janelle went through and how she got to be such an amazing, amazing woman that she is today. She was born in 1969 in St Margaret's Hospital in Sydney. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Is that correct? I could be like a police interrogator. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, welcome. And thank
you.
you so much for coming forward and doing this with me. This is not an easy thing to do, is to come publicly and worldwide. We have subscribers all around the world, and to become so public with such a, still it is a not an open subject. However, it is becoming more open. So, Janelle, I would really love you to speak to our audience about about what age were you when you were told? Tell me about your family situation and maybe the feelings you had as you were growing up, that sort of thing, about adoption and how your early type years went.
Yeah. Well, I'm adopted when I was about 8 weeks old. Clearly, I don't remember that, but I don't remember actually ever being told. The one thing that my parents, I think, did exceptionally well was just have us grow up with that word being normal. And but I remember a time probably around 5 or 6 when it started to really, when I started to understand what it meant. And there was a period of time, probably around when I was about 8, maybe 10, where I felt embarrassed by it because I felt different. I felt embarrassed. I felt that I was different. I knew I was different to other kids. I started to recognize and fine tune the recognition of similarity between all of my friends and their parents. Like I could tell you, one of my girlfriends, she walked the way her mum did. She used her hands the way her mum did. Another girlfriend looked like her father. And I used to notice all of those little similarities when I was a kid and feel a bit gypped, really, that I didn't have that feeling. I didn't look like anyone in my family. I didn't act like anyone in my family. And we had really different values, perhaps, maybe. So not knowing when I was told, I'm actually glad. I would have hated to be told later on, because all of my suspicions of being different would have come true, and it would have felt like a big lie. So my parents did an exceptional job with that. I do remember a time when I was about 10 years old that my younger brother, who's 5 years younger, and now he may have been like 3 or 4, maybe 5 at the time, and we were at my cousin's place running around playing with all the neighborhood kids, and he was running around telling everyone that he was adapted. No, he didn't even know the word. He was adapted. Yeah, I'm adapted. And I remember telling him to be quiet and to shush, because we didn't want anyone to know that we were different. And throughout my life, I've had significant people who shouldn't probably have made me feel different, make me feel different. like my grandmother, for one. I think she always favored my cousins who were biological.
Right.
My stepmother, when my father passed away, claimed dibs on decision making about my father's ashes because we weren't biological. We weren't his real kids anyway, which was, to this day, like, breaks my heart that she could think that. I guess the journey of an adoptee is that we think that we should have been given to a family where we would have had a better life. I guess if my mum had to give me up, that was because she couldn't give me the life that she thought I had, whether it be forced or not. So part of my growing up, when my parents, ended up being domestic violent central, and, remember stories of hiding under the bed because we were so terrified of them. So part of my teenage years was a lot of resentment towards my adopted parents for not making it right,
Right.
because there's no guarantee that if you give your child away that they're going to go to the better family and have a better life, which is, I guess, the ultimate, idea of the whole thing. But that wasn't necessarily the case. I certainly don't remember growing up feeling like I'm having a better life because of this.
Did you have brothers or
Yeah.
siblings? And were they adopted as well?
Yes. Yeah. I have, actually, my mum couldn't have children. And so I have an older brother who's adopted, not biological. I don't have a biological.
Right.
I actually do have half brothers and sisters that I know about biological, but I'm sure we'll get to that part of the story. So I have a younger brother who's 5 years. So my parents back in the 60s and 70s were able to adopt 3 different kids from 3 different families, and we all have very different stories around that. My birth mother came from Queensland. So, and we were living in Sydney at the time. So no coincidence that I actually maybe end up in Queensland. Yeah, with her and I have had some parallel lives, which has been pretty miraculous, actually, I think.
So you understood from a reasonably early age that, and this is a myth, this is one of the myths around, and this was also a myth that the mothers were told too, that they were going to a better home than we could provide. And it surprises me so young that you understood that whole concept, that you didn't go to that better home, that, let's say, your birth mother was told that was going to happen.
Yeah, and look, that was really evident in the experiences that I was having. My mum, like, bless her, not being able to have her own children, she had an insatiable desire to just have more kids around her. So she fostered a lot of kids. One of those foster brothers, who was a teenager when I was 6 years old, sexually abused me. I knew that I wasn't having a better life. My father, like, bless him, and rip, he was an alcoholic and gambled our money away every week. That wasn't a better life. We lived in poverty. In the western suburbs of Sydney, when I was 9, my parents had one of the most enormous fights, one of the many, but that my mum kicked him out. And so then we were growing up in a single parent home back before, there was assistance. So mum did everything she could to raise us, but we lived in poverty. There was always, and there was a bit of a stigma around that. I went to what I would consider a pretty good school. I went to a Catholic girls' school. That was kind of part of the adoption deal too, is that we were raised Catholic. And with that in mind, I kind of think, again, should have had a better life. But when I compared myself to my friends, it was far from perfect. And it took me years to overcome some of the challenges that I faced in those times. Like, I've spent thousands on counseling to get myself right and be whole from the adversity.
So you could have had those same experiences had you not have been up for adoption.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yet those two collided. Those two
Mm.
circumstances collided.
Yeah.
And did that at all bring in the lack of trust? Did you come out with lack of trust of what people, authority or whoever told you? Because that is a really big issue to have dissolved in your life.
Most definitely. And back in when I was about 17, I applied to community services to find my mother. And the only way, and I knew I wasn't going to find my father because he was an American military person who was here on a few days leave. So I pursued to find my biological mother. And my idea at the time when I was a teenager, because I had a massive identity crisis and I just didn't feel like I fit in anywhere, was if I find her, I'm going to find me.
Right.
And I did eventually find her. It took community services about 3 years for them to find her. And when we finally got matched, they disclosed to us that she had actually submitted the same documents but only about 2 months after I did in the same year. So there was this energetic pull toward each other. But because my parents had moved out of Sydney and I had moved around, it took them a little bit of time to find me because of the electoral system and how that worked back then. So we made the match. I'm going to say that we got initial assistance to organize the meeting, and then we were just left on our own.
Yes. Yes.
And
what year was this, Janelle?
This would have been around 89, 90. I was 19, I think, when I met her. So yes, it would have been 1990, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
So the new laws were had come in where the birth mother can now find the birth child. And now I think it was the birth child in 1984 that the rules had changed, where I think the birth child could go and find the mother, but the mother had to go on a roll.
That's right.
She couldn't go and literally find her child.
So it was like a mutual agreement. If you put your details in, and we can then match you and go from there.
Right.
That's basically what happened. I'll never forget the day I got that letter, because it was 3 years later. And I just thought, well, she doesn't want to find me. And I got the letter saying that she did. And I fell into a heap. I had a panic attack. I couldn't stop shaking, crying. My boyfriend at the time, bless him, poured me a schooner glass of port and poured me a bath. And I sat in the bath just spinning. My head was spinning. I couldn't believe that this was actually going to happen. But I also had then the other side of it, where I knew I had to tell my adopted mum that I was finding my biological mum. And I remember when I was 16, when I had initially mentioned that that's what I wanted to do, Mum spiraled out of control and she just lost it. She thought that I was going to be leaving her. I guess insecurities came up for her that, what if the other woman is better? She's going to lose me. I understand all of that. But what it did point out was the lack of support towards me and my experience. It was all about her. And then I'm old enough now to figure that out. I'm a mum myself now. At the time, though, I just needed to know that it was okay. I needed to get this piece of my personal little puzzle filled. So I stopped wondering. I needed to know how I was born, how I came about. And I was fortunate enough to have a brief relationship with her. But as I said, the community services kind of failed us, because the reason why we no longer have touch is because we didn't have help navigating this very diabolical relationship, which is so complex.
So complex. And this is what a lot of the majority of people don't understand, that it should be simple, it should be, heartfelt, but rarely it is. Sometimes it is. And I honor those.
Yes, I do.
And it's funny, I'm now still with a support group, but we do ours by Zoom now.
Yeah.
And this story of the adoptive parent going into a downward spiral is a common theme.
Yeah.
And the thing that it does to the adopted child, I've heard, is it puts a lot of guilt on them.
Oh my gosh, yes. And it actually affected my relationship with my biological mother too, because now she has only ever known me as her daughter.
Yes.
But I've never known her as
A
being her
mother.
daughter. Yeah. So every time she came to visit me, every time she brought someone new to introduce me, she introduced me. This is my daughter, Janelle. Now she'd already named me someone else too.
Yeah.
So even her just calling me Janelle was something that she needed to get used to. But she introduced me to everyone as her daughter. And every time she did it, a little part of my soul just cringed at it. And I built up a lot of resentment for her about being her daughter. I'm not like, and I don't know if I can swear here, Barbara, but I was like, I'm not your fucking daughter. I'm the baby that you gave away.
Right.
And my mum, who did the hard yards, and I was not an easy child to raise. My mum, who did the hard yards, has the right to claim me as her daughter, and that's how I felt at the time. And
Mm.
that constant, I don't know, daughter thing actually had me build up some big feelings. Where one day I let it rip on her over a conversation on the phone, and she did breach some trust and some privacy of mine, and I let her know it. And I only ever saw her one other time after that, and that was probably the day that I accepted that she really was my mother, because I noticed, yeah, it was so bizarre. We're walking up the stairs to her apartment, and I noticed she had short hair, and as we were walking up the stairs, I noticed that she has a birthmark on the back of her neck, the same as I do. And my thought at the time was, oh my gosh, it really is her. And like she heard me, she turned down and looked at me at the stairs, and she said, you've got your father's eyes. And I just burst out crying. Nobody had ever said that to me before, ever. Nobody said you're like someone before.
Yeah.
And we had a beautiful conversation that day, and I drove away, not knowing it would be my last time that I'd ever see her again. And that was before mobile phones. When you moved, you didn't take your number with you. And so we lost contact. Mm.
And this often happens as a transference with the myth that I spent 45 years saying I wasn't his mother.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was told.
Yeah.
I was his birthing mother. But that's all I was. It was like you're the vehicle for somebody else's child.
Yeah.
And another, a very urban way of saying surrogacy, really.
Yeah. I don't know, because I'm a mum now myself, and I've got adult children, I don't know if I would agree with that now. I would love to meet her again, because I'm a grown woman. I've got my own kids. I've had my own experiences. She met me as a child who was lost, and I had so many questions, and I didn't show up, being humble, and I was confused, and I was accusing, and I was blaming.
Angry.
I was angry, and I felt betrayed, because I didn't have, the better life that I thought. Now I can reflect on all of that now and say, I love the adversity that I've had in my life, because it's helped me evolve into the person I am today, and I like who I am. When I was younger, though, I had massive self-esteem issues. I had abandonment issues. I constantly projected rejection. It affected all of my grown-up relationships, my intimate relationships. I can only say now, just recently, after spending thousands of years and money, time, everything on getting my head right and my heart right, that I'm able to have a fully functioning normal relationship.
Right.
Because that's been the biggest impact for me.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, because there was no counselling back there.
Yeah.
And I went on to marry my son's father and had more children. But that marriage was absolutely destined to break up because we didn't have counselling. And they're just realising now, let's say in the last 10 years,
Yeah.
that counselling is so important. And then to talk about the counselling, and I've got a dear friend, Joey, and he's a hypnotherapist, and he gets angry at me a lot, and rightfully so, but he tried to heal me and couldn't understand why it wasn't happening. And when I finally got to a counsellor, she only counselled birth mothers and adopted children.
Okay.
Because it was so complex.
Yes.
And other counsellors can do a job, but they can't do the job because there is so much. I read a book, Coming Home to Self, and I cannot tell you the author, a lady, and I would recommend it to adoptive mothers, birth mothers, and adopted children because she relates to all of them. And for you come into this angry, and rightfully so, so. And you've got, and you're told you're not supposed to be angry because you had this wonderful adoptive parents and wonderful life you were heading. And the abandonment is one of the most diabolical of all the emotions that come out from the adopted children.
Yes, it sure is.
And they have to live with the consequences of never trusting and never trusting if we're going to go away another time.
Yeah. And that just plays out in so many other areas of your life, Barbara. In my life, I will speak for me, that has played out for me in so many ways. It's affected so many things. Like, I'm a big thinker. I love ideas. I've got massive capability, but I stop myself for fear of rejection. What if my tribe leave? What if I'm not good enough? And I wasn't good enough once before. What if I still am? And it's just, for me, it's a constant, check in on myself, because I know it's not true. And I did ultimately have two beautiful parents, whilst they were in themselves a little bit dysfunctional. I had two beautiful parents who loved me, and I know that. I didn't necessarily know that when I was younger, but I know that now without a doubt. And life goes on and we evolve from that adversity. But the abandonment stuff, my new partner, I've mentioned it to him, and I know how it shows up too. So, if you see this is what's going on for me, and this is how I'd like us to be able to handle it together. So I'm really fortunate because I have that insight and the foresight to be able to articulate that. There's so many people who don't.
And most people don't.
Yeah.
And how did you cope with the need to find your identity with your birth mother? And that's what you're looking for in the beginning.
Yeah.
Is that identity of who you are, like the thing on the birthmark. And it was really funny because my son's son said, now we know where Dad got his blue eyes from. Always wondered where he got his blue eyes. And so they're the beginning of belonging. But then you go back to the adoptive parent, and how did you cope with that? Did you feel disloyal? Did you feel happiness, guilt? What was it?
I think because I didn't really look like, anyone in my family. Like just one example, my older brother and I would go out when we were older teenagers, would go out together, and people thought we were boyfriend, girlfriend. It's like, no, we're actually brother and sister. We were going to wear brother and sister t-shirts, just to clarify that.
Right.
Because there was no similarity. The identity crisis for me was very significant when I was younger. And because of some of the abuse that I went through when I was younger as well, that just made it even worse, I think. So for me, the desire to find her was, it was the be all and end all. Like, finding her was finding myself. And I was very fortunate to have one of the teachers at one of my schools allowed me, kind of like took me under his wing. I think he could see the lack of, male dominant partners in my life, well, not partners, fathers in my life. And he took on a bit of a role. And he said to me once, I'll never forget this, that it doesn't matter. You're always going to be searching for the real you. And when you're ready, the real you will show up. But now I was only about 15 at the time, met my biological mother when I was 19. And the 5-hour conversation I initially had with her was very incredible. I mean, she's got like the funniest little fingers and fingernails like I do. And she has like the same kind of cheeks like I do. And kind of cute, same little bird nose, and I noticed everything. I can tell you, I noticed everything that was similar about us. And it was nice to feel that kind of connection. I'd never really felt that before. Now, and I mean, I have connection with my adopted family, but it's not like that. What I truly understand, what I missed, was when I had my own children. And the only thing I ever wanted in my whole life, didn't want to create, I just didn't want anything else but my own children. I wanted to feel that bond, that connection. I wanted to experience what that was really like. And I'm very fortunate to have that kind of connection with my kids. I have a very, very close relationship with both of them. Not all the time, but life is normal for us. So going back to the identity thing, look, I personally think that, finding your identity is a lifelong journey, because we continuously evolve, depending on the situations we put ourselves in. So that was a massive chunk of information to process.
Right.
Within about that year or two that we saw each other, I gained more information. And then when we stopped contact with each other, it didn't really bother me at the time, because I sort of got what I needed at the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I became a mother myself that all of this started rearing, I'm going to say, its ugly head again.
Yep.
And I have tried to find her since, and I don't know how to. My daughter especially, it affects her too, because she doesn't know who her biological grandparents are. She doesn't know, like, she knows that I've got a half brother and a half sister, and she wants to know them. She's got biological cousins. Now, my ex-husband, who I had my babies with, was also adopted.
Right.
So neither, like our biology starts with us. We don't have the history of knowing anything. So there's so many factors here. I could go on for days.
I tell you what, there is a lot of factors. I'm pretty spellbound, actually, I must tell you, Janelle. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. What I would like is another time to go from when you first met your mother to identifying not only your traits and personality and characters and DNA, but how you overcame you never overcome abandonment, but you do recognize it.
Yes.
And how it does affect your I'm going to make an assumption here that your kids always knew that you were adopted.
Yeah. We always told them that they knew when they were old enough to understand that we were both adopted and what that actually really meant.
Right.
Yeah, we've always been honest about that.
Because I think our beginning stories are interesting
Mm.
and they're essential, and people need to know the truth of from every side, what it was really like. Not the fallacies, not the myths, not the isn't this beautiful, you're welcoming home and brand new, all that.
Yeah.
It's really important to acknowledge that truth and then find out how we resolved a lot of that, because I'm still resolving. I'm now 69, coming into the 70, and I'm still resolving a lot. And my son's been with me for 9 years.
Yeah.
And the issues still haven't ceased. And just
that's a really huge point.
it is so huge. So can I ask you to come back another day?
I would love to. I think this is a really important topic. There are so many people affected by this, both kids and adopting mothers.
Absolutely, grandparents and you know, I look at my other two boys, how it's affected
them too, I would imagine.
And the fact for them, it was a full brother as well.
Yes, that's beautiful.
And which adds another level of brilliance and complication.
Absolutely. I can imagine.
Yeah, and I would really love next time to work with you about meeting your step brothers and sisters and things like that. There's got to be a way for you to find her again. And I don't know quite about finding her, but I do feel really, really, really powerfully, strongly. And you know what I do for a living.
I do.
That you're going to meet your siblings.
Oh, I would. Nothing would bring me more joy. I sometimes wonder if she's still alive. I would love to.
Yeah,
I have such similar stories in what I did in my older life, compared to even how I got here with her experience with this military man. And there's definitely another chapter here.
Look, we won't make it that far away, because I'm just so excited to hear the rest. Because the audience, the viewers, I've not heard Janelle's story per se. We met through Facebook. I'm not even sure how we met, really. But certainly it had nothing to do with this. So, Janelle, God bless you, really. And the ability to speak your truth. I'm just so overwhelmed with the way you were able to understand at such an early age. There's so much that you've given today that is such food for thought. And for other adopted children out there, please contact me. Let me tell your story, or let you tell your story. If anybody would like to contact Janelle, you're more than welcome through my email address, barbara.d.hayward@gmail.com. I'll put that out at the moment because I'm having a little trouble with my other email, and it's barbara.d.hayward@gmail.com. And Janelle, thank you.
Thank you, beautiful lady.
Thank you.
And I'll be forever grateful for this experience. And I do remember the first time we spoke, and I just thought, wow, you're the mum I wish I had. I really do. When I heard your story, I was like, oh, I wish you were my biological mom. So I'm putting that out there, that by default, I'm going to just claim you, okay?
Okay, you can claim me. Because, you know, the truth is I didn't have a daughter. And every mother needs a daughter.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much to the listeners. Please go to YouTube, Barbara Hayward. Uncensored Truth and beyond, and leave a comment. Please subscribe, because you know how it works. We need subscribers for us to continue the work and to advance and to get our work out there a lot further. Don't forget, if there's any biological mothers or fathers please, and children of adoption, please let me know, and let's get your story out there. Let's make this our time to walk in the sunshine. No longer do we need to be in the shade under the big tree. Let's go and get our vitamin D in the sun together. Until next time, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.